Hey, what's up internet? My name is Nikki and today I'm gonna do a introduction into horror reading. So I'm really excited to do this because these are my recommendation books that I give to people because I'm always constantly being asked what are some good horror books to start off with. Just because there's a lot of friends who basically want to know what kind of books I should read, if I want to do something scary, especially since spooky season is coming up. Granted, spooky season is all year round for me, so this is kind of fun. So I hope you guys enjoy this and let's get into it. So the first one is kind of like a no-brainer because I'm obsessed with this book, and that is Joe Hill, 20th Century Ghost Stories. I love this mostly because if you're trying to get into horror books and you don't know where to start, I always suggest doing short stories. So the first two books I'm introducing are short story collections. The first one obviously is Joe Hill, 20th Century Ghosts. I like this because it's strictly 15 scary stories, or somewhat of a scary story because not all of them are spooky. They're more of horror books that kind of mess with you, and I enjoy telling people to read this, especially since The Black Phone came out, because The Black Phone is in this book. Granted, they did change the name of this book to The Black Phone and Stories, or Black Phone Stories. Does not revolve strictly about the Black Phone universe, it's other stories. The story that I highly enjoy in this is Voluntary Committal. It's basically about two brothers. It is about an older brother who is writing a letter to the police, and basically everything that he knows about what his brother has done. So it starts off when they were younger. His brother is on the autistic side. He's obsessed with building things out of boxes, or just building items in general into buildings and so forth. So one day he talks about that his brother got so obsessed with building items that their family decided to make the family room that was in the basement into his own building studio. The issue with this is that one day he goes down to go get his younger brother for dinner and realizes something's not right. So he goes into his build castle that he made out of cardboard and realizes halfway into crawling into this cardboard castle he can stand. And the scary part about this is he can actually hear something marching in the distance. And that's all I'm gonna leave you with. So there's other spooky stories in there, especially The Black Phone. So if you're interested, highly recommend if you're just trying to get into horror and see if you actually like it. This, I give it more introduction, mainly because you get to tell which kind of horror books you want to read. So the next book is kind of a request I always get constantly is, okay, so what Stephen King book should I try? So I'm always gung-ho when it comes to anybody wanting to read the king of horror himself, Stephen King, but I kind of always want to warn people because Stephen King is not something you go into lightly, because for anybody who's ever read anything by Stephen King, you kind of understand. There are books I'm pretty sure would have been shorter if Stephen King just basically did not give like a full 3 pages to one character that we only see once. And so my recommendation, anytime someone who's never read Stephen King, or basically if they've seen Stephen King movies, I always recommend this. It's not really horror, but it does have one of my favorite stories in it, and this is one of my favorite Stephen King book of all time, just because it is so near and dear to my heart, because this is the book I started with when I was younger, and that is Stephen King Different Seasons. This is also a short collection. It actually has 4. Most people, when I recommend this, always give me a look, but I tell them that if you've seen Stephen King movies, you will know some of these. The first story in here is Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption, which everybody knows because of Red, our love of Morgan Freeman. This movie just crushes the soul. It's not horror, but it is horrific what happens to the people in the story. The next one is Pupil. This one does kind of freak me out, especially with the whole thing of just like this psychopath decides to be friends with an ex-Nazi and basically blackmails him to teach him how to kill people. No, not to kill people, how to torture people, how the Nazis did. That was kind of really creepy. The second one is The Body, also known as The Stand. That is not really scary, but it is a psychological thing where these 4 boys, they're basically friends, and you're kind of like, how are you guys friends? And decide to go find a dead body on the railroad tracks, and the life lessons they kind of learn during the journey of going there, it's just kind of like the psychological horror of just like the realization of you growing up. So I don't find that really scary, but just the fact when you start thinking about your life getting older, it's kind of terrifying. So I feel like that kind of hits home for some people. And the last one is The Breathing Method, which has never been turned into a movie, which makes me so sad. That's the only story in this book that has not been turned into a movie, and it's The Breathing Method. And it's one of my favorite stories in here. It's basically about a guy who gets invited to this cult society, like secret like party. And so what's happening is, before like the main event of dinner and something like that, they start talking about the people they invited and why, and they tell scary stories. And the main person that we're following, he hears a story that sounds familiar, and this is about a doctor who saved a baby. And essentially what ended up happening is this doctor was on the way to the hospital to go deliver a baby, but before he got there, there was a car accident where there was this pregnant lady who basically got into a car accident, and she got her head decapitated off, and she's basically still pushing this baby out of her. And just the horrific images of like childbirth and this mother trying to save her child even though she's not with us anymore kind of freaks me out. So Stephen King, The Different Seasons. This is my recommendation anytime anybody asks me for Stephen King books. It might not be everybody's, but this is my favorite one. Okay, now moving on to the next part, which is full-length books that I highly enjoy. I always recommend, just because when people tell me no, I don't really want short stories, I want something a little bit more content, a little bit more of a story combined, like not open-ended like most short stories are. So these are my picks. So the first one is Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Trimley. I love Paul Trimley's basically writing, because he's one of those writers that makes you think something is worse than it actually is, and then when you kind of figure out what the whole plot is, you're kind of, holy crap, I can't believe he did a Scooby-Doo on me, but more like R-rated Scooby-Doo, if that makes sense, where it's basically, it's an actual human being who did certain things to these people instead of it actually being like ghosts or supernatural phenomena. And that is the Head Full of Ghosts story. It basically follows a blogger who's talking about a reality show that came out 10 years prior. And the TV show, basically you go back and forth between the blog and the TV show, and the TV show follows a family who believes their oldest daughter is actually possessed. And so it's sort of like a TLC, Bravo kind of thing, where the family is going through this drama, and you get the point of view of the youngest family member who does not understand what's going on and truly believes her sister is possessed because of the things she's doing since they moved into this house. So it's up to the reader to decide what is actually going on. Is it fake? Is the sister actually possessed? Is there something going on in the house? Is it the family? What is going on? So I highly recommend this. The next book is Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. I love Riley Sager's writing. He's almost the same as Paul Trimley, except his is a little bit differently. I personally love him. I know there's a lot of people who would love or hate him. I enjoy his writing so much, especially when I kind of always expect it to be something supernatural and it's not, or maybe it is. Who knows? It's up to you to decide. Home Before Dark is my favorite book of all the books he's read. All the books he's written so far, mainly because I like haunted house stories. That is kind of like my main jazz. I think I have to blame my dad for that, because I ended up watching The Haunted of Hill House, the black and white version, and ever since then I've been obsessed with haunted houses, anything that has to do with the story with haunted housing or something going on bump in the night in homes. So Home Before Dark by Riley Sager revolves around a young lady whose father ends up passing away and ends up giving her a house that she believed a long time ago that he actually sold. This house has a story behind it where he wrote a book about her being possessed because of this house. She does not remember the events of it. She only knows that she lived in the house for 4 months because they were supposed to flip it, and something incredibly bad happened, but she doesn't remember what it is. But she knows for a fact it was not haunted, it was something else. So she goes back to this house to flip it, to change it, and to figure out what her father was hiding. Everyone basically in the town, her mother basically are trying to tell her, do not go down this path, you do not need to go to the house, just sell it. But she's determined, and because she's so determined to figure out what happened, let's just say it was not an easy thing for her. So highly recommend. Okay, so before I go into my number one pick, these are some honorable mentions. So if you wanted to do a full-length story, Joe Hill, Heart-Shaped Box, highly recommend. So the next honorable mention is a Stephen King book if you are interested in actually reading a full-length novel, and that is The Outsider by Stephen King. This is one of his newest works. I believe this came out in 2016. There's also a TV show with Jason Bateman. He's the guy who did Ozark and another like show that's like hilarious. I can't remember on the top of my head right now.
I don't know what I expected.
But highly recommend. The next honorable mention is Final Girls by Riley Sager. If you did not want to do another haunted house one, highly recommend this one if you're into slashers or you believe you're into slashers. Last but not least, for honorable mention is Hater by David Moody. He's kind of an obscure writer, but I really do enjoy his books so much. He hasn't written a lot. This is actually a trilogy, so if you wanted something more about zombies or something of the 28 Days Later or World War Z-esque horror, highly recommend Hater. David Moody is not well known, so highly recommend this so much to anybody who wanted like a unknown zombie-esque book. So finally, my number one pick is Pen Pal. I'm gonna be very honest, I'm not gonna pronounce that whatsoever because I keep butchering it. People laugh at me when I try to. I don't mind, but I always feel bad because a name is special. And when I say that, that also goes with Pen Pal because there is something special about this book, especially when it comes to names. So essentially this follows a young man when he's in his 20s. He's telling a story about his life to a bunch of friends, and they basically tell him that is not right. Something is not right with your childhood and you need therapy. And so he starts thinking about it, and he goes back to his childhood home where his mother is and asks them what happened when I was around 8 years old. And you go back, and so the story starts off with this young boy, 8 years old. He's doing a school project. He takes a picture of himself for geography to see where a balloon would take his picture, how far it would go, so they will learn geography. Everyone in this class ends up getting their a letter back saying how far their balloon went, except for him, until 2 weeks later he gets a letter back that is not actually where his balloon ended up, but a picture of him outside of his school. So it's about stalking. It's basically just about loss of childhood, about what happens when you're not friends with those kids anymore from elementary school, like what happened to them. And it's just this crazy thing where maybe the things that happened to you when you were younger might seem funny then, but now as an adult it seems kind of off and not right. So it's just the loss of childhood, the loss of safety, just the loss of just essentially everything you perceive to be safe and just okay is not anymore. So highly recommend this book if you want to stay up late at night or just want something that is not really well known in the horror genre, because I do know that a lot of people don't know about this. It is also originally was posted on Creepypasta or Reddit, not Don't Sleep at Night or something like that. I believe that's the thread now, or was, I can't remember. And I remember reading this when I was younger on Creepypasta, but when that was a big thing, if anybody remembers that whatsoever. So those are my recommendations for this video. If you have any horror book recommendations you think I should read, or anybody else, let me know in the comments. I can't wait to hear what you guys say, or if you pick up any of these books, let me know. So that is it. I hope I catch you later. Whoop-bam!